beats. That's right. Here we go. All right. So, I mean, it's a little tricky trying to get this all working. It's like if you haven't been working out in a while and things. Look at me. I'm getting all 70s looking. Button this up and get a little more proper. All right. So, relaunch episode for those of you guys jumping in. Thank you for tuning in live. If you're checking on the archives, awesome. Like, share, subscribe, all those things. You know how that thing goes. So I'm excited to get this podcast launched again. It's been a long time. I've actually moved out of Jacksonville to Virginia shortly for a short period of time. And I've now moved back. And I do just want to make a side note real quick. I want to thank my mom for just being awesome and all the things that she's done to help me out, even though there's no ROI on helping me with anything. I mean, I feel terrible. Maybe this podcast will turn into something, but don't know. By the way, because this is a relaunch episode, and like I said, I'm working through different kinks and stuff. The audio, if it sounds funky, please let me know. I've got an AC running because it's hot as shit in fucking Jacksonville, and I really don't want to turn that off. So if it's annoying and you guys can't hear shit, then just fucking let me know, and I'll turn the bitch off. I got a remote control. I don't even got to get up. All right, so yeah, so the relaunch episode, I got a lot to talk about. I'm going to have a lot of guests coming up, and I really like having the live format. So it'll be probably 9 o'clock on Wednesdays, Sunday session. I like having those a little bit more. I mean, none of these shows are really formal shows, but Sunday sesh could be anything. A lot of times we're just debriefing what we talked about on Wednesday if I have a guest or whatever. I don't know, whatever. Anyway, so for those of you guys that are familiar with The Boyd, you know that, as much as I can, I try to air this live and get feedback and commentary. Right now, the podcast is like a lot of podcasts and sort of very shoestring kind of thing. So I don't have any live engineering, stuff like that. So I'm trying to do it all by myself. So I'm trying to read the comments and manage the feed at the same time. So sometimes things slide through. But let me tell you this, though. If you are joining us on Facebook or on YouTube, please make sure to comment and join the conversation, because this is really about talking about things that we as a society have either decided were taboo or, I don't know, whatever's on your mind. A lot of times it's just, I feel like I have a different perspective than people, than other folks, and that causes some drama sometimes. And so why not air the drama? I mean, everybody loves some drama, right? So here you go, some drama. All right, so I don't have a real specific thing. I was trying to think, like, what should I do for the pre-launch episode? I was trying to see if maybe I could get a guest on there. By the way, if you want to be a guest on the Boyd, you could always join me via Skype. In fact, let me make sure I have Skype on here. Like I said, join me via Skype, or YouTube Messenger works. If you want to be on camera and joining. Otherwise, you can do you can do like a messenger call or whatever, right? Yeah, I mean, do it that way. I don't know. I mean, I can get a Skype number if you really want to talk on the phone, kind of thing. But anyway, or you could just jump in the comments. Maybe I should get a Skype number. It probably wouldn't hurt. What do you guys think? I mean, how do you if you were to communicate, how would you communicate? You could even send in an audio message or recording, and I'll just play the recording. Though that would be a little tricky for me to do, since I don't have an engineer to pre-listen to whatever you're sending. But I mean, I guess, whatever's clever. So the topic I had tonight, I think maybe on the Facebook, it has a sort of a topic in addition to the pre-launch episode title, was trolling the Atlas Society. So let me tell you a little bit. If you're not familiar with what the Atlas Society is, it is really easy. It's just a Facebook group, and they are like Ayn Rand or Anne Rand, however you pronounce her name, like sycophants. Sycophant. The word of the, oh, I don't have my, I was gonna, what do you guys think about me putting a whiteboard up there behind me or something so I can talk about, like, for instance, tonight I just used the word sycophant. Let's look that up. So that basically means that you are like a supporter, or like a basically brown noser of a thing. So let's do this. Boom. Let's change this to oh, that's not a good. Hold on. Boom. All right. Geez. Resolution's not so good. Why? All right, hold on. See, that's why I need an engineer. If you feel like you want to be an engineer and help out with a live podcast, hit me up. All right, so for those of you guys that are watching live, you can probably see that there's a definition now. So I guess maybe I don't need a whiteboard. Sycophant, person who acts obsequiously. Oh, there's another good word for us. Towards someone important in order to gain advantage, right? So sycophant. Let us learn that word, because it is an important word, because we're seeing that happen a lot. So there's a lot of different things. I mean, you probably grew up around people that acted as a sycophant towards professors or teachers or whatever. And where is this? All right. And that's a big deal, because, for instance, I brought up the word because these people at the Atlas Society are sycophants of Ayn Rand and the whole, what would you even call it? Like selfishness doctrine, I guess. Let me see if I can pull them up. So for those of you guys that are audio only, or are listening to the audio only stream, I posted the definition of sycophant in Reddit. So, but now I am actually going to go ahead and display the page, landing page for the Atlas Society Facebook. All right, guys, here, let's take a look here. So here is Atlas Society Facebook. So yeah, I just basically been trolling these guys. So they're like all these Ayn Randian type things. Look at this. Look. Meet victimhood, one of Karl Marx's greatest tools. She exploits people by convincing them they are oppressed. Right. So they got this video. There's a little.
When it came to victims, my father defended them, but my mother fabricated and glorified them. As a child, I found the louder I cried, the more attention I received. Attention was nice, but what I really wanted was power, and I set out to find it.
You see, I mean, you guys can watch.
At first, I hunted tragedy.
So maybe
tragedy that struck me.
Maybe maybe it is intriguing you to.
Some victims
to
stayed
see
with
this.
me.
Here, let me.
Decayed with me, making tragedy the great central drama of their lives.
Let's see here. All right.
Others left.
I can't really now.
I had competition, the so-called
so-called
virtues.
when I'm
Optimism,
selecting a specific
self-esteem,
area of the screen,
pride, and worst of all, gratitude. Those who followed them survived and thrived. Worse, with the advance of capitalism.
All right. What was I going to say? Yeah, if you guys could help me out a little bit, is the Oh. Nope. Went to the infinity screen here. Oh, another infinity screen. All right. What am I doing? Let's take a look here. Let's move these. See, all of this sort of like growing pains, whatever. I don't know what you want to call it. I guess it looks sort of fadey. Does it look sort of faded to you guys? Hey, I see some comments here. Looks like Jake joined. What's up, Jake? Whiteboard would be cool, he says. So I guess Wednesday I'll try to have a whiteboard. All right, so yeah, so guys, if you're watching the Atlas Society video and you're intrigued, go watch the rest of it. It is like the biggest. I mean, maybe I can have an episode debunking it, but I really just want to introduce you guys to this place, because if I told you about it, you probably wouldn't believe me. Let's take a look here. I don't know what this is. And Ayn Rand business thing. Oh God, it's so stupid. Let's see. Stephen Hicks, if he's a supporter, maybe I'll maybe I can go to his show and ask him some questions. Victimhood. Look at this. Socialism, flawed and immoral system inside and out. You know, the crazy thing is they don't ever use the actual definition of socialism. When you send someone praising collectivism nearby, see, this is so dumb. The dumbness is profound. And like, look at this comment for. So when you sent someone praising collectivism nearby, and then someone puts on there as an answer, Professor X was all about working with the community. I fixed it for you. Just stupid shit. Now, a lot of this stuff is just a bunch of platitude crap. Oh, socialists don't understand basic economics. Let's talk about that. Laissez-faire capitalism is the only social system based on the recognition of individual rights. I mean, I guess that explains the child labor we had under capitalism before the government stepped in and made it illegal. I guess that explains workplace deaths and how many people were getting abused back in the day before the government stepped in and had labor laws and protections for workers. Because that was capitalism. It wasn't socialism when that was happening in our country. By the way, so hopefully we can have a discussion about that. Here's some things. Top things that do not exist: unicorns, dragons, functioning collectivism. So silly stuff. If now some of you guys might be looking at this and being like, "Oh, well, you know, this is really true. I really resonate with this stuff." Like, well, you might. Okay. For instance, here's one: Cuba, Venezuela, Fantasyland, right? Oh, wow, look at that. Perfect. You know, it's pretty funny. So I believe I commented on this one. Let's see. What is this thing? Oh, yeah. Let's take a look here. Oh, God. Let me try to get in. This thing is too tough to manage. All right, so here we go. I mean, like I said, I troll these guys, so there's all sorts of stuff that I say on here. All right, so here, let me pull this stuff up here. So this is what I said to sort of refute this meme here. So like, wow, so accurate. Wait, which one of these countries guaranteed workers direct equity in the enterprises they helped build and democratic control of workplaces? Never happened. None of them did that. Oh, maybe not so accurate after all. Get a clue. And then hashtag Dunning-Kruger is a hell of an affliction, right? So let's see. There's 26 replies. I'm not going to go through all the replies, but we'll see. You can see some of the tropes. that you'll see like the, what's a trope? It's like this, it's like sort of an expected sort of thing. Like a movie trope would be like, I don't know, the guy getting the girl, or I don't know. You guys can come up with some good definitions of tropes. Like, I don't know, like for some reason I'm blanking out on tropes. It's like the things that you expect to happen in a movie or in whatever you're dealing with, right? So you get the normal tropes through this. So so someone says, and no worker in capitalism has to foot the bill of a bankrupt attempt at business. Okay. You're delusional, James Boyd. Want some more examples? You can have North Korea or the USSR. And then Sid Rodriguez replies, what enterprises? Even the government can't fulfill people's needs there. Open an enterprise, quote unquote, and you're jailed, please. Right? So, I mean, how dumb, right? It's just silly. As far as Cuba, I don't know what the percentage private firms or businesses exist in Cuba. But in Venezuela, it's like 2/3. It's like 2/3 private businesses still. They only nationalized certain things. And even then, I mean, Venezuela, they could totally fall off the map. And the reasons why they did it don't necessarily tie back into the tenets of socialism. Because really, socialism in essence is democratic control by labor, because what is capital without labor? If you're rich and you have what do you do? What do you do to make money? You could invest in something, right? Or you could be a rent seeker, which that's a different concept, and we'll talk about that. Basically become a parasite on society. But even if you weren't, let's say you hire labor and stuff, you would not be able to multiply yourself without labor. You wouldn't be able to expand business without labor. Why do people hire employees? For the ability to expand, for the ability to basically exploit them to take a profit. And the reason why I say exploit specifically is because there's no alternative to this. There's no alternative to working for someone else. I mean, if you have capital, you're born with capital. Okay, great. But if you're not born with capital, then what do you have to do? You have to find someone who will take your labor, the value created by your labor, and then take whatever slice they possibly can while paying you the least possible, right? That's just, they want to get the most profit. That makes sense to us, right? They want to, that all makes sense. But for some reason on the Atlas Society side of things, these guys that don't really think about it, usually libertarians, because they're like the toddlers of economics. They don't look at the whole macro effect, the material reality of what's going on. The fact that a capitalist will pay you inversely proportionate to your desperation. What does that mean? Inversely proportionate. Inverse of something means you're flipping it around, right? You're going backwards. Inversely proportionate means the more of something I am, the less I'm going to, or the less I do something, the more the flip side, right? So for instance, let me give you an example. I'll say it again. The wages from capital are inversely proportionate to the desperation of labor. So that means the higher the labor desperation, let's say you have a whole population of very desperate people, either desperate, could have been because of the government, which often is hijacked by money, which is capital, right? The capitalists hijack the government, force people off the land where they're just living on their own, hunting some deer, going fishing, growing some corn, doing their thing. And then they jack up the property tax or introduce a property tax, or they start doing something that makes peasants, otherwise, peasant, we'll call them peasants, because back in the day during feudalism, they were peasants and they were self-sufficient, but they had to pay a tribute to the feudal lord. And of course, we changed all that and went to capitalism, in which case, basically, the people with capital become miniature feudal lords over labor and have no actual responsibility to labor. So instead of having the opportunity to go live on the land and live off the commons, as they used to be called, and grow my own stuff, right, I have to buy my way out of it. I have to buy this land that I'm going to live on. I have from someone else who acquired it. How? If we go far enough back, how did they acquire any of this land on the grand United States of America? Was acquired how? Right now we have something called non-aggression principle, says we can't go and kill each other and take each other's land. But we were playing musical chairs boogaloo back in the day, and anyone could get anything, and now suddenly the music stops, 100 years ago, a couple hundred years ago, and or not even that, freaking 19. We're still sort of doing it now. Empire building, right? Maybe we didn't add any states, but we're empire building as far as resources and land that we control as a country. Anyway, so here's some of my refutations. William McAllister, no, they don't have to pay for the business is what I'm referring to. No, they just lose their job and ability to survive, right? So when you lose your job, you have to go hunt for another job. Meanwhile, rent must be paid. Meanwhile, food must be acquired. Meanwhile, children are starving in your household, right? So you have to get a new job, and that takes time, and time is money. And if you don't have time, or excuse me, if you don't have money, then you don't have time. And if you don't have time, you become desperate. And when we talk about wages, inverse proportionate to desperation, right? So I'm telling you, there's a macro issue here, and there's a lot of moving parts, but these low, I don't know if I hate saying insulting things, but God, it's just an observation. I just observe how low in critical thought most of these guys are. And you know what it is? I didn't see one of the posts on the Atlas Society yet, but that backs this up. But let's see. All right, let me just read these real quick. So George Jones, let's go back. What did George Jones? James Boyd, you're delusional. Want some more examples? You can have North Korea or the USSR. All right, North Korea is still around, right? Of course. So I say, George Jones, though USSR and North Korea guarantee workers direct equity in businesses and democratic control of workplaces? How? When? Please cite how and when that ever happened, right? It didn't. Okay, so it did. So how can we say that it is, how can we say that those things, anything negative you want to associate with those things, how can you also associate it with something that doesn't fit the definition of the thing that you're claiming that it did? So obviously that means if it doesn't fit if you're describing a pig as a cow, it doesn't fit the definition of a cow. Just because you keep calling it a cow doesn't mean that it is now a cow. It means that you think you want to call it a cow, but everyone else identifies it as a pig. Words have meaning. And so we try as best that we can to use the same words to talk about the same thing. But they don't want to do it. And I'll be honest with you. There was a time when I was on that sort of side of the fence of things. And it was, there was an awakening that I had to go through. And you know what the biggest awakening was? I was tired of being disingenuous and tired of being low-key, sort of dumb about things and not really critically looking at the world and the reality in which we live. I realized I had to bullshit people. There was times when I would argue for capitalism while I was working in finance. So it's not like I had no clue what I was talking about. I have more clue now that I've left finance, right? Why? Because I actually read the books that were quoted in finance and how ill quoted they are. I'll tell you what, it's ridiculous. All right. So what did Sid Rodriguez said something about an enterprise? Hey, around 2/3 of Venezuela's economy is private business. So no, they're not actually socialists then. And they have social programs, but again, there's democratic control in socialism. There is equity in the ownership, equity in the places that you work under socialism. The situation we have now is basically wage slavery is what's going on right now. And so what is, and people think that's hyperbolic. What does that mean? Hyperbolic, hyperbole. What is hyperbole? Like a big exaggeration. Like you know what I mean? That's sort of what, oh, look at this. Look at this. It's not hyperbole. It's not an exaggeration. It's real. When I'm talking about wage slavery, it's real. You can look at Frederick Douglass quotes about it. There's other people. It's not like I made this shit up. All right. So, all right, Atlas Society, have an idea, act on it, and create your own wealth. Wealth is the product of man's capacity to think. So if you cure cancer and give up the patent to cancer, is that, I mean, is that what is, you know, is your lack of wealth a reflective of your capacity to think? How superficial is this? What if your capacity to think is, oh wow, we better not destroy the earth with continued consumption and exploitation and extraction? That's a pretty intense capacity of thought, right? But it doesn't necessarily transfer to wealth. Einstein, I'm pretty sure Einstein was not a necessarily wealthy man. So it was his capacity to think compromised by his lack of wealth. This is how stupid Ayn Rand is, and to believe that there are actual sycophants of this mode of thinking is just, and her philosophy is just fucking ridiculous to me, that there's people out there. Look at this. Matthew Walters explains why the far left and modern Democratic Party is bankrupted. I don't even know. I doubt this guy even knows what the left is, of what really, as far as the spectrum of politics are. Right. Can't complain about socialism if there's no survivors left to complain. Right. How does guaranteeing workers' equity in the places that they help build and democratic control, so like you can't just close a plant unless the people know about it, how is that going to kill everybody? Socialism kills and always will. How is that? Yet capitalism killed many times over. I mean, look at the global south. Look at Africa. The imperialism from the West, Europe and the United States, has created capitalist societies there that live like we did at the turn of the century, while capitalism was running rampant and roughshod over our society. That's happening on the fringes of empire. Those people are dying because of capitalism, right? But they're so like feeble-minded that they can't see the larger implications of what is really happening. It's just like so stupid. Say what you will about socialism, but it's killed more communists than 2 world wars. Socialism and communism are different, right? It's just these people are so daft, and it's not 100% their fault, is the thing. The current situation we're in is due a large part because of propaganda. Right now, what's propaganda? We've talked about this before. Let me see what's going on. All right, we've talked about this before on the show, and you could to some degree. I mean, you could say that I'm a propagandist if you want. I have something I'm trying to say, a point I'm trying to convey, a message that I'm trying to persuade you about to some degree. So yeah, you could say that I am a vector of propaganda to refute long-standing propaganda, right? There's still echoes from McCarthyism. I mean, people used to be jailed. If you were to say, yeah, I'm a socialist, you'd literally get jailed back in the day. So any kind of socialist or non-capitalist or someone critical of capitalism, for the last, I mean, in including the Cold War. So even after McCarthy, going into the Cold War, with all the propaganda from the state and all of the word again, sycophant media, and the movie industrial complex, hand in hand with the military industrial complex, just glorifying this American exceptionalism, Top Gun kind of stuff, which is, great. It's nothing wrong with being proud of your country and wanting your country to be the best country, I guess, as much as you can, without like being weird about it, like to the eradication or to the detriment of the rest of the world, right? That's pretty messed up to have a situation like that. But there's some people that don't care. They don't give a shit. Like I have a neighbor of mine that said he's fine with us bombing Syria as long as his standard of living doesn't change. To me, that's fucked up. But I mean, some people, they just, I don't know. That's just how they are. But what are your thoughts? Jump in, put a comment. Actually, I don't even know if I have Skype on this computer right now. Or you can message in on Facebook Messenger. Find me, or most of the folks watching right now are on Facebook, actually. So you can jump on Facebook Messenger and join the conversation if you want. But anyways, lately, just been trolling the Atlas Society for all their stupidity. But, there's a reason for that. There's a reason why I try to, they're not the only people I troll. I'm trying to find that one person that has like this airtight argument that really, I'm like, I can really work on and like really think about that. Like, whoa, wow, you really illuminated it. But there's nothing. There hasn't been anyway. It's all the same bullshit, the same shit over and over again. And that's the thing they don't seem to understand, is that the paradigm now is not necessarily a natural occurrence. It's not like a natural human tendency. When these Ayn Rand Atlas Society morons say stuff like collectivism is evil, or like they try to say it's human nature not to be collectivist and individualist, and I'm like, are you fucking daft? Have you ever looked at fucking anthropology ever in your life? You can't fight the lion alone, dumbass. You can't fight the pack of wolves alone. When we're talking about prehistoric man, when we're talking about, hominids, all practically pretty much all species of hominids, they were all communal. They were all group species. So to say that human nature itself is to be individualistic is total and utter bullshit. And if you're an Ayn Rand fan, please reconsider your thought process, because I'm telling you, it is the most superficial thought process you could possibly have. It is literally, it's like being an animal or being a child. Children sometimes have a hard time. Well, actually, it's weird. Sometimes children, you see them do this heart melting shit. Like this one kid sees the other kid that doesn't have a cookie, and what does he do? Without being told, what does the kid do? You guys could probably fucking finish the story, right? And everyone's crying. Oh, look at this kid. He either gives the whole fucking cookie away, gives half his cookie to this other kid, right? That's natural shit. That's empathy. Most people have it. You know who doesn't have it? Fucking psychopaths. You know who gives cover for psychopaths? Fucking Ayn Rand. She's a fucking psychopath. And she is basically pushing this sort of psychopathic philosophy, as if that, it's basically a social Darwinism. which is a complete misconstrued philosophy that doesn't base itself on material reality, but only on it basically creating a cover for an excuse for eugenics and trying to make it a scientific ploy or endeavor, right? So, oh, wow, look at this. All right, so let me give you an example here. Let's take another look at these morons. All right, so here's another one. Individual rights supersede any public or social power. The fuck does that mean? So rights for what? Let's talk about that. Rights, individual right to do what? To like own people? How about that? Can you own somebody? Maybe that's not what they're talking. Oh, but then you are what is it called? You're ignoring the individual rights of someone else by owning them, right? Okay. Well, you know, how'd they get around that? They said, well, they are not a them and they do not count, right? And guess what? Guess what system introduced and upheld slavery for so long? Was it socialism? By definition, no. Did the workers have ownership in the enterprises that they helped build or the enterprises that they worked for? Did they have ownership? No, they did not have ownership. Okay, did they have democratic control? No, they did not. Were the landowners extracting profit from their labor? Yes, they were. At the minimal cost? Oh, yeah, they were. Oh, wow, look at that. And all of the proceeds generated by the initial investment of capital, did they go back to the investor of that capital and belong wholly by law and enforceable by the government to that provider of capital? Oh, indeed they were. Oh, so you mean slavery existed under capitalism and thrived under capitalism, not socialism? Crazy, right? Individual rights supersede. How about individual right to pollute? Can you do that? Individual right to extract. Is it your individual right to kill the last rhinoceros? Right? See, how stupid is this? It's based off of a false premise, is what it is, right? There's a false premise that in order for a social or collective, quote unquote, collective society to exist, that one must give all their individual rights up, and that's absolutely not true. It's absolutely not true. Now, look at this stupid quote. One thing is, you know, like fans of Star Trek might be aware that, you know, Star Trek sort of represents a communal society, basically space communism. And where was I going with this? Shit, I had a point. Dang it, I was messing with the screen and I forgot. Because I saw this stupid thing that says justice does exist in the world, whether people choose to practice it or not. Like as if a karmic hand will create justice for those people who destroyed the earth or enslaved others, or like, yeah, Jeffrey Epstein's really going to get justice whether or not the people act on it, or Trump is going to get justice for all his shenanigans. Whether or not we act on it is Dick Cheney getting his justice right now. I mean, according to who? I mean, it's just such a so dumb. She's so stupid, and I can't believe that there are people out there that think that this is the real deal shit. I mean, it's ridiculous. No rights are without property rights, no other rights are possible. That's so stupid. Oh yeah, I was gonna say, in space communism under Star Trek rules, do people still have individual rights? Because Star Trek seems like people are pretty chill, and they don't seem like they're devoid of individual rights. But I'm not saying we should change our world into Star Trek world. I mean, maybe we should. I mean, it seems like people are pretty happy in Star Trek. But anyway, that's the thing with these fucking idiots, man. Oh God, it's just, it's disheartening because these are the folks that make up our society. And how do you? God, I really want to find the one. How do you convince someone that being an individual, oh my God, I gotta find one of these. Let's see. God, they have so many stupid memes. But I really want to get one because you're not going to believe, like, it's going to sound like I'm being hyperbolic. But if I told you that, all right, well, here's one. I mean, this is not as crazy as some of them. So they got a picture of, what's his nuts from The Matrix. Lawrence Fishburne. What's his? Oh God, I forgot the freaking character's name. Morpheus. Yeah. Anyway, he says, "What if I told you objectivism is a philosophy of benevolence?" And this objectivism is pretty stupid. It's basically like, oh, just look objectively. Don't use your feelings, and it's benevolent. I mean, that's how they justified slavery. That's how they justified child labor. I mean, it's so stupid. So stupid. Let's see. Only individual can learn. Oh my God, these people are so dumb. I mean, the thing is, we are the state. We, the people, are the state. That's what is, I mean, that's how it's supposed to be. And so instead of making it so, they just complain that the state even exists. God, I just saw one of these things. Like, I'll describe what I'm looking for. Okay, these individual memes where they like talk about selfishness as a virtue and these kinds of things, or how collectivism is so immoral. It's like, well, what do you think a fucking corporation is? That's a collective of people working together to make profits. It's fucking collectivism right there, dumb fucks. God, these assholes are so fucking stupid. It just pisses me off looking how, because it's so disingenuous. If you want to have a real conversation, let's have a real conversation. We could really fix some of our social ills if we have a real conversation. But these people are such bad actors. And the thing is, it's either they're too stupid to know, or they're doing it malevolently, so to keep people ignorant, right? There's an actual attempt to keep people stupid, ignorant, uninformed, not stupid, uninformed, ignorant, whatever you want to call it. Man, maybe they took them away because they were just too easy to debunk. Anyway, they assume that people that are advocates of socialism are envious. And it's not that. It's that we see a larger historical precedent that's already happened. Like, if you're familiar with history, especially the history in this country, is a history of labor struggles and fighting for rights against capital the whole time. And so, or either that or empire and genocide, right? So choose one of those. It's in there in our history, right? And so I'm not saying that you need to go walk around kicking rocks and moping around about it. I'm just saying let's be real about it. But that's the thing. You can't be real and be a supporter of this Atlas Society shit or maybe even capitalism in general, right? And so when I'm talking about giving people or guaranteeing workers equity in the businesses that they're part of, when I talk about democratic control of those businesses, that doesn't say the government controls it. If you don't work for the government and you suddenly became part owner of the business that you're working in right now, in addition to your wage, you're also earning ownership, like shares, basically, in the business. So as it grows, you get a dividend, just like a shareholder would. As it grows, your value of your shares goes up, just like a stockholder, right? Because you're putting your time there. People always, these people on Atlas Society always talk about the capitalists and what they risk. They risk their money opening this business, and they might not get it back. But what do they really risk? When they put their money up, by the way, the other question becomes, where did they get their money? Were they exploited and eventually saved the money? In which case you're admitting that you have to enter exploitation in order to escape exploitation. But also, or they inherited it, right? How did they get their money? Number one, and then number two, now I lost my train of thought. Oh, the risk. So if they do lose it, what happens to them if they do lose it? What, they become a worker? They become labor, right? What a big risk. Oh my God. You risk now becoming the laborer. How terrible, right? So we now see what the focus is on. Also, when the laborer hitches their wagon to the capitalist adventure that has been put together, the investment, what if it fails? Not by the fault of the worker, but just because maybe mismanagement or who knows what it is, the same risk that the capitalist takes. What happens when the laborer is part of that and it fails? Do they get to sell off the equipment and get something back? No. Oh, no, they don't. What do they have? They have nothing. They have to go look for another system or mechanism of exploitation that will take them and probably pay them inversely proportionate to their desperation, unless they unless the government stepped in and made it illegal to do that. I mean, hence the minimum wage. And that's what I'm getting at, is that through the same type of legislation that gives us minimum wage or labor laws, we could look at guaranteeing workers equity in the places that they work, like over time, maybe over 5 years or 3 years, you can start earning equity in the business that you helped build with your labor, that you could have found a different job. There's something called opportunity cost, right? Normally, opportunity cost is used to describe investments, where you could put your money. If I put my money in investment A when I could have put it in investment B and made a higher return, then that differential, right, that spread is my opportunity cost, the cost of the opportunity to invest in something different, right? Labor also has opportunity cost. I hitched my wagon to this capitalist enterprise. If they fuck up, I lose my job. There's no guarantee of a severance necessarily. Now, some places do give a severance, which is the least that they fucking can do out of all the exploitation and reaping of the benefits of your labor. They give you some pittance of a severance. Now, some people get decent severance. What would be better is that you'd be able to cash in on your shares and be able to or if they go out of business, chances are you're not going to get a severance. But even if you did, if there was enough for the capitalists to pay a severance, I guarantee they're taking down quite a bit more, right? So at the end of the day, really, if capital wants to build their shit, if they just want free labor, then automate. Or automate basically, or whatever. But if you're going to use human beings, then they should be treated as partner, because time equals money. If you put money and take money and buy shares, why is that so easy to understand? But if time equals money and I put time in your business, I worked 10 years at your business extracted profits off of me for 10 years. And I have zero ownership in that. Now, some people say, "Oh, there's stock purchase plans, stuff like that." Sure. In some cases, some employers do offer that. Not all employers offer that. I worked for a major brokerage firm, extremely successful brokerage firm, and they had no method or vector for equity. Now, I could open an investment account, take some of my wages, and then put them into a business and buy into that business and try to extract off of a different business's labor, right? Even when you're investing, how are you making that return? Off the capitalist doing work? No, it's off labor doing the work, and you're taking a dividend off their backs, right? When they're growing shareholder value through labor and through what they're doing, right, your stock price is going up. So even capital gains is on the back of labor. So even if you're a laborer and you go and buy into equity into another company, you are in essence just extracting from labor like everyone else. The time that you invest should be exactly that word, invest. You've invested time. The money that they give you is in return for your labor. The ownership that they give you is in return for your time. Does that make sense? That is a key difference, because you can't get that time back. That time you spent away from your daughter, from your son, from your partner, from who the fuck ever, fishing, it doesn't matter. The time you spent away on this earth, the only lifetime that you have that we know about, you spent toiling away for someone else, right? Or eventually, if you open your own business, then great. And yay for you. You've created a system of extraction by which now you can multiply your efforts on the backs of labor, right? So that's the goal. Escape a mechanism of exploitation by creating my own mechanism of exploitation, right? That's the American dream, or so it seems. Now, of course, not every capitalist is bad. Not every job is bad. I'm talking about a macro sense. I mean, if 40% of our population can't handle a couple $100 emergency, there's a problem. Capitalism wages are not reflecting real life cost of living, as far as your housing, your food costs. All of those things are getting inflated, but wages aren't. And God forbid something happened to you, you lose your job or it becomes obsolete and you don't have money to retool yourself or learn something new. Or maybe you just don't have the mental aptitude to do it. So what? Let's say you're dumb. Let's say you're sort of not that bright. Should you die on the street now? Because you can't get a job that pays you well, because, again, what's wage based on? Inverse proportionate to your desperation. You'll desperately do things for cheap, right? So if, let's say, you're not able to get a good job because you just don't have qualifications, you're not good at school, you're not good at learning a skill, what then? And what if you don't have family that can support you, right? Now, there might not be a ton of people like that, but if you think about it, everyone's fighting to get to these few, like by definition, there's fewer good jobs than there are shit jobs, right? So the big question isn't about the good jobs that are out there. Obviously, if you have a skill that can be exploited by capital and it's rare, supply and demand, whatever. But, when people were dying in the meat packing plants, the supply was high. Should people die? Is that the mantra of capital? Well, the supply is high, so go ahead and die. And when enough of you die, we'll start raising wages, Like, that's how these idiots on Atlas Society think. They literally think, yeah, well, if you can't make it on whatever wage by the time you die, well, I mean, it's social Darwinism. You sort of die. So how does that really look like? Do they die alone, die in their apartment, or die on the street, or like where? Like, do they go someplace to die, or like can they just die in the middle of downtown? Like, where should they go and die since they can't find a decent job? Like, I mean, these are just stupid things, stupid thoughts. Like, they don't understand the macro consequences of the contradictions of capitalism, because they don't want to read Das Kapital by Marx and Engels, because it's fucking huge and it's hard to understand. But if you read it, you'll understand a good critique on what the fuck is happening and why child labor existed once, why people were going through massive abuses and dealing with it because of capitalism. The idea of primitive accumulation, kicking people, self-sufficient people, off the land to force them into enough desperation to make them cheap labor to create profits for capital. These kinds of things are hard to understand, and they are not often taught, because the status quo wants to protect the system that we're under now, right? So they're simply not going to give you the reality as it is, and that's why I made the shift away from being more. I mean, I probably used to identify as a libertarian, and in all honesty, I was pretty economically illiterate. I thought I knew a lot because I worked in finance. I used to teach how to pass the licensing exams and all this shit. Had to talk about and had to understand in order to teach it effectively. As some people might say, well, you never actually worked with dark pools in the equity world, or you never actually created a mutual fund. You're right, I didn't. But you know what? I worked in a company that created mutual funds. So I called the guys that created the mutual funds and I talked to them, or the guys that funded the dark or spread equity transactions across dark pools. I talked to those guys, the people that managed the book of orders for the go down on the exchange or to NASDAQ, over the counter. I talked to those guys. So it's not like I didn't understand what was going on. It's that I didn't fully understand, right? I never read The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith. Once I read it, I'm like, what the fuck are these assholes talking about? They're misquoting him. Invisible Hand? I totally misquoted it, right? All the tenets that go back to citing, that capitalists cite back to Adam Smith, and you see it fewer and fewer because more and more people are actually reading Adam Smith, and they're like, dude, you're fucking full of shit. Adam Smith talks about, hey, tell you what, in 1776, mind you, that's when this fucking book was written. 1776, it's hard to read because of that, partially, and it's huge, and there's a really long section on the price machinations of silver during the time, which may or may not have relevance. I mean, it probably has some semblance of relevance now. Anyway, but the major concepts, including the idea that, hey, capitalists, if you're going to create a factory and have people to work for you, you're going to have to find people that aren't already just living on the land. Wake up at dawn, crack of dawn, go till the fields, go tend the horses, and whatever else you got, and the other animals you have. You go do that, and you're done by 2 or 3, and you're drinking your ale. You're brewing your ale, right? You're making your whiskey or whatever the fuck you're doing, right? You're making your own shoes. You're making your own shirt. You're just doing your own shit with the rest of your time, right? Now, some people might be like, nah, who's going to do that? I don't want to do that. You guys ever heard of the fucking, what do you call those guys? The off-grid people, right? The survivalists out there. people just trying to be self-sufficient, right? And they don't want to live in the city anymore. They would much rather go live off the land and not have to go work for some asshole or even a nice person, knowing that their labor is creating a value that they're only getting a fraction of, right? Some people on that fundamental reason don't want to participate, and we have no alternative. You can't simply go to the commons and claim some land and go try to make it work. It just doesn't exist anymore, right? There was a time once, doesn't exist now. So if it doesn't exist, then the labor market is not laissez-faire. It is manipulated to create desperation, right? So when they talk about voluntary labor market, it's not a true free labor market because there's no alternative to the exploitation, unless you're able to invest in yourself, which costs additional exploitation in order to fund that type of endeavor. Unless you can get it for free, but how are you getting it for free? If it's not a social program, how are you getting it for free? Capitalists? What? So they can exploit you further? They're not only going to invest in you to exploit you more, right? So it's a sham argument that they have, because there's all these people that are trying to find their way into living in a more natural way on their own, outside of society, or even within a society, or maybe a communal society, but they can't. Because why? Because you have to buy your way out. You have to buy the land, right, from somebody, right? You have to continue paying towards government, whether you're using it or not. Now, there may be some things that we can work out to where you still have to pay something for living out in the commons, or some, I don't know. There's some, I mean, we could talk about it, but let's have a real conversation about real shit, as opposed to pretending that people have a choice other than to be exploited by capital. I mean, that's just the raw skinny of it. Now, I see there's some people that have been joining on Facebook. Write a comment if you're even if you hate what you hear or you like what you hear, or what I'm talking about. Leave something. I mean, I'm not going to necessarily change what I'm talking about, but it's really, the message is being put out there. If you have, if you want to refute something that I said, please jump in and let's talk about it. Because it's not just for you, it's for everybody that gets to watch, that watches this video later. You might ask, it's like being in a classroom, you know, you ask a question. The answer isn't just for your benefit; it's for everybody's benefit. And not that my answer is necessarily all that beneficial per se, but to that end, someone may see your question and say, "Wow, I never thought of it that way," and I really love those moments. You know, so please participate. Now, we're coming on to an hour. I didn't really want to go too long on this, so I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap up, but I want to thank you guys for joining. But first, let me tell you, Wednesdays, 9 p.m. will be the airtime for the regular show. So coming up this Wednesday, I plan on having everything ready for a 9 p.m. show. So I hope you guys can join for that. So that is, and if you're watching this in the archive, it might not make that much sense. Oh, and now my displays have now all reset on me. Wow. All right. Wednesday the 10th, July 10th, 2019. Oh, Jesus. Something just happened weird on my on my setup here. So anyway, that's what I get for trying to run a podcast by myself, and not being a good multitasker. Yeah, my displays just went all wonky on me. But anyway, I want to thank you guys for joining me. If you have some questions, please write them in the comments. I go back and read through the comments so that so we could talk about it. Usually, like I mentioned before, on the Sunday session, I will typically, am I even live on Facebook anymore? I might not. I might have lost my Facebook feed. Oh, maybe not. Here we go. I don't even know what's happening anymore. This whole thing. All right. Like I said, 9 o'clock Wednesday. Hopefully, I will see you then. All right. Been another episode of The Boyd, and I'll leave you with the awesome tunes of Seprock Beats. Peace out, y'all. Say a bomb that's say a bomb that's less than Cupid. Say a bomb that's less than Cupid. Say a bomb that's less than Cupid. Less than Cupid.